night as the full moon rises through a strange forest on a lonely road. At the signpost ahead, you have come to your final destination. Welcome to Greenwater Nightz with Sam Ritchie. Now, here's your host, Sam Ritchie.
Hello, my name is Sam Ritchie, and you're listening to Greenwater Nightz, broadcasting deep within the recesses of the Cascade Mountains, where normal and bizarre blend together, and what is taught is fiction, and where myth now becomes reality. Welcome to the world I live in, along with my friends, where the Bigfoot and little people are real, and ETs and UFOs abound, where strange lights and orbs appear, and yes, even portals opening up to reveal other worlds. An area not for the faint of heart, but for those seeking the truth, and in the process making astonishing discoveries about ourselves. In this episode, I'm going to delve into something that goes beyond what we typically can sense. You know, when we talk about our physical world, we're really referring to that which our physical bodies can interact with using our five senses. With our eyes, we see the beauty of nature, the trees, the lakes, animals, and birds of every kind. Everything we see also has a form of some kind, whether it's solid or liquid, at least to our own senses. With our hands, we can feel the bark of a tree, and even water when we wash our hands under a running faucet. We also note that most solid objects, like trees, are opaque. Yet a solid pane of polished glass can almost seem invisible. How many times have you seen a bird actually slam into a sliding glass door after it's been cleaned? Or even things we cannot see directly, we acknowledge its existence. Examples are the wind. It causes the branches of trees to sway by the power of its force. Yes, there is much diversity in the world we live in, the reality that we interact with every day. However, have you asked yourselves the question, is there anything else beyond what we as humans are sensing? Is there something beyond our perception that is just as real as our world and yet totally invisible to us? Some may already be aware of paranormal encounters with ghosts and UFO sightings that suddenly appear and then disappear. Sightings of cryptids, such as the Bigfoot and the little people, have been witnessed all over the globe by people who have no reason to fabricate their claims, and many doing so with great personal sacrifice of their careers and relationships. So those of us that have moved past the question of, is there anything else out there? Now we're asking the question, how does something exist outside of our physical world we live in, and outside of our ability to detect with our five physical senses? There is another question that can also be raised. Can other worlds or realities exist in the same physical space as our own? Well, thanks to the theory of quantum physics, we're beginning to now understand some concepts as to how this can be possible. The idea of different dimensions or realms are entering into the thoughts of average persons from science fiction movies and shows over the past few decades, such as Stargate and Sliders. And now, science seems to be lining up with much that has been produced as so-called science fiction. Did some of the script writers have some connections with those in the know that were fully aware of this new science but was kept from the general public? That's something to think about. Now, in this episode, I would like to lay out a concept of quantum realities and how this process, in layman's terms, could possibly work. Though I'm not a scientist or a physicist, I have personally studied electronics as an amateur radio operator and have a very good knowledge of the nature of the electromagnetic spectrum. I have also been a computer programmer for the better part of 35 years, and the more we look at the nature of our reality, the more it begins to resemble how computers and software works. Even our DNA code is comprised of sequences of 4 unique amino acid proteins that forms the basis of a 64-bit computer instruction. A combination of these DNA sequences actually forms the software program that each cell reads and performs its unique functions accordingly. Now, I realize some of this information might be a little bit heavy to grasp, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Let's begin by talking about a computer that has what they call a single CPU processor in it. You can think of a simple home computer from back in the 80s, like the Apple II, or the color computer from Radio Shack back in the day. And of course, even before that, the earliest of these were called the mainframes, and the very first personal computers that I mentioned could only really process one set of instructions at a time. And this was actually called top-down programming. And what that really meant was the CPU would start at the top, or first instruction, and then it would work its way down until it came to the end of the program and simply stop. So these computers did not originally have the capability to process more than one program at a time. Now, a little later on, as technology continued to advance, a function called an interrupt was introduced that would allow one program to run and then stop temporarily to allow a few other instructions of another program to run, saving a bookmark where it left off and then resume back with the first program. Now, though the computer with the single processor was going back and forth with these two programs, it was happening so fast that people just assumed the computer was actually running two different programs at the same time. In time, this interrupt feature was a standard part of the newer computers, and today we call this multitasking, as hundreds, if not thousands possibly, of programs are running seemingly at the same time. Now, keeping the concept of this interrupt in mind, let's talk about how we as humans perceive our reality. Although our higher consciousness may exist outside time and space, and of course that might be a discussion for another time, our physical awareness of our world seems to flow continuously, just like the flow of a computer program. Well, what about other programs that may be running at the same time? Although we may perceive everything as being non-stop, our quantum reality may possibly just be a series of software instructions that get interrupted at regular intervals to allow other programs to have a chance to run. In technical terms, this would be referred to as a time slice. Each program gets a time slice share of the CPU's processor. And this also reminds me of how a vacation timeshare works as well. A group of people share the same property, but are allocated a specific time slice when they can have exclusive use of it. Now, this implies that perhaps our reality is nothing more than a series of start and stop actions. Of course, we will not perceive it that way, since it's taking place at an incredible rate of speed or frequency. Think about watching a movie at the theaters, especially in the day when film was actually used versus digital. As far as we're concerned, everything on the screen seems continuous and flowing with no sudden jerking motions. The reason it only seems that way is the film is presenting a series of still photo frames at a rate that our mind does not perceive as being still. A standard rate of what they call 20 frames per second is enough to fool us, but if it were slowed down just enough, we could see the individual stills that are being presented. So what is the quantum equivalent of these start and stop stills that make up our reality? Keeping in mind this is just a concept of something that might be probable, let's examine this a little bit deeper and go down the rabbit hole and look at it very logically. For our reality program, I'm going to call it, to be unique from others, it must have its own unique identifying code or name. The quantum equivalent of this is a quantum signature, which basically is a unique energy pattern that everything in our reality shares at the very underlying core of our existence. You might say that it is the underlying foundation from which everything in our perceivable reality is based. Now, this is very important because it keeps everything in this reality from slipping in and out of other dimensions, creating nothing but chaos in its wake. So if our unique reality is like a single computer program, what happens when it is actively being processed by the master CPU we call the universe? A quantum pulse of energy takes place, allowing a particular time slice of a particular reality to have front and center stage, at least for that micro moment. When the pulse has completed, that reality's data, per se, is stored while other realities or dimensions have their own time slice activated until our reality comes full circle for its chance to be resumed. Now keep in mind, this is happening at a staggering, super high frequency, thus giving us the perception that all realities and dimensions are happening at the same time and within the same space, just like using the illustration of a modern computer running hundreds of programs at the same time, giving us that illusion. So this is a very plausible concept of how quantum realities may actually work. And it certainly gives an explanation that, at the very least, an average person can convey these particular thoughts and not necessarily sound like they're crazy for mentioning it. So thus far, I'd propose that each reality or dimension has what you call a base quantum energy signature or pattern that's complex in structure enough to contain all the data necessary to establish those unique characteristics of a particular universe that makes them entirely unique. And in the greater scheme of things, each reality or dimension will get access to its own time slice by the ultimate universal processor created by the source, or what some people call God, or the source of all energy. It does bring up some questions, though. Can a particular reality or dimension contain several realms that are related to each other, quantum signature-wise, but be out of phase with each other? I'm going to present further ideas or further concepts on how these different realms may exist and how the Bigfoot and the cryptids may be accessing them. Now I'm going to go back to the concept of what we were talking about with regards to quantum signature with respect to our own reality. I mentioned that everything we see around us, everything that's considered physical to us, things that we are sensing with our 5 physical senses, happens because everything that we are physically interacting with shares that same quantum signature. Expounding on the concept of our reality being a series of energy pulses, let's use a few analogies to make this a bit clearer. Think about a strobe light that's usually used at parties. Have you noticed that when it's used in a dark room with a group of people and is set to a slower rate, it looks as if everybody is part of a still photo shoot. There is no perceivable motion when the strobe light is on, almost like it's part of the movie frame. However, as the strobe light is turned up to its highest rate, everything then moves in a linear fashion without all the start and stop effects of still photos. Now, as long as the strobe light pulses are on, we are able to see our reality at that point. But what happens during the time between pulses when the strobe light is not lit? Keeping that question in mind and switching back to our quantum discussion, other realities or dimensions are being experienced during the time that the strobe pulses are off in our reality. As far as we are concerned, we are only sensing our physical reality only as long as we perceive that these strobe-like pulses are on. Hence, the only reason why we only sense these particular set of pulses and not those in other dimensions is because our own physical bodies are only in sync with those pulses of this reality. Another analogy would be the film used in movies before the digital age came along. As I mentioned before, the film is comprised of a long set of consecutive still photos that are shown on a projector at a certain rate to give the illusion of real motion as far as our minds are concerned. But what happens if we swap out the film image with a totally unrelated image on 1 or 2 frames? If we watch the film again, we may not notice anything. However, let's say the image is that of a bag of hot buttery popcorn and a hot dog. Once again, when we watch the movie, we still don't notice anything, but wait, all of a sudden we seem to have this craving for popcorn and maybe even a hot dog. Welcome to what is now called subliminal programming that was actually used and may still be used in today's movies. Although this is getting off topic a little bit, it's interesting to note that although our conscious minds did not pick up on that image of the popcorn and hot dog, our subconscious mind was still able to process that image into the desire to eat something. Now, let's try another experiment with our imaginary film strip. Let's place that image of popcorn and hot dog on every 10th frame of the film and replay the movie. Now, our conscious minds will, in fact, pick up on the image, but it will now appear as a very dim, transparent, and ghost-like image superimposed on the movie itself. The reason why we perceive it like this is because our minds perform a bit of processing to normalize the image information of all the frames within a particular time frame. Since the popcorn hot dog image only appears as a small time slice compared to the related images of the movie, our minds will place greater weight on what appears the majority of the time and simply downplay the popcorn image to an insignificant transparent image. I actually tried an experiment where I took two different photos, one with some scenery in it, and then one of the same scenery but with myself standing in front of it. I then used my video editing software to create a series of duplicate video frames of the first photo and then placed the photo of me on every 5th frame. Although it was a bit choppy when I played the video, I was able to see the background scenery behind me, thus making me somewhat transparent. The more frames of my image that were spliced in comparison with the plain scenery, the more solid I would appear. Comparing these movie frames with strobe-like quantum pulses, could it be that the cryptids like Bigfoot and the little people are able to go out of sync with the quantum pulses of our reality to appear less solid and more transparent? If they were not part of our dimension, that is, their strobe light is on when ours are off all the time, then we would never know that they even existed or could even interact with them. However, that's not the case. They have appeared solid to many witnesses over the years, and they have also appeared not quite so solid to the point of being barely perceivable. That implies they may have some mastery over their quantum state. Not only can they keep their quantum strobe pulses in sync with ours by appearing solid, they can seem to adjust the strobe pulse frequency up and down to only allow their pulses to sync up with ours only part of the time, hence appearing cloaked or translucent. This frequency rate of pulses are part of the quantum signature I previously mentioned and allows multiple dimensions to exist within the same perceivable time and space. Another question could be asked though, is it possible to have the same quantum pulse frequency but yet be out of sync with the same reality? Yes, I believe definitely so. This involves a concept of what has been called phase shifting, and I believe it explains how the cryptids make full use of this method. As I mentioned, everything that we can perceive as one of our states of matter, for instance, solid, liquid, gas, and plasma, all pulse together in sync with our own human bodies to give us that full sense of physicality. What would happen if we were able to, for a moment now, cause a slight delay in the quantum pulsing at the base level of our molecules, or atoms? Let's compare this to the turning of a bicycle wheel that turns a full revolution of 1 turn per second. We painted the top part of the wheel with white paint in order to track where it's at any one point while it's turning. Now let's take another bicycle wheel and paint the top of it with white paint as well. If we align both wheels with the white paint at the top and start turning them at the same rate of speed, the white paint will be at the same spot on both wheels regardless of where it's at any one point of time. However, if we were to align the first wheel to the top and then align the second wheel to start turning from the bottom, The white paint will always be at opposite ends of the wheels all the time. In our strobe light analogy, that means that whenever the pulse was on for the first wheel, it was off for the second. At no point in time do the two wheels exist in the same realm or even partially. This is similar to the case of the quantum signature being at different frequency, except the frequency is the same for this reality, but is said to be 180 degrees out of phase. It's very possible that each dimension has a mirror equivalent of where things can exist opposite from each other in the quantum state. I'm sure most everyone has heard of noise-canceling headphones. They work on the concept of using two different signals, in this case audio, that are 180 degrees out of phase with each other to cancel each other out. In some ways, when applied to quantum states, it could indicate the existence of a separate realm where the cryptids go and reside. But what happens if the quantum pulses are less than 180 degrees out of phase? It stands to reason that as the pulses move closer to being in sync with our reality, the more visible the cryptids will become. Starting out at 180 degrees out of phase, the cryptids are completely invisible. As the phase shift becomes less, the cryptids will then be seen as somewhat translucent, creating a distortion of the background behind them. In fact, I created a translucent image of myself in front of a tree using photo editing software, and immediately noticed two important things. First, I was completely blending in with the color and texture of the tree, and second, my image appeared more two-dimensional than three-dimensional, almost like a flat picture against a tree. Could it be that the faces that we see on trees may, at times, be the cryptids looking at us while in their translucent state? That's definitely food for thought. Now, as the phase shift becomes less than 90 degrees, the cryptids will slowly begin to appear as solid beings. It has been my observation at times when I have taken a series of consecutive photos of cryptids, they start out as solid but slowly fade to becoming transparent or cloaked with the background bleeding through. I believe that they prefer showing themselves as solid only when they are still, and then become translucent or invisible before they move on, especially if they know that they're being observed by humans. Personally, I think they have really mastered the art of stealth, using their special abilities like this to completely fool 99% of the human race into thinking that they are not there at all. It's really amazing when photos can be taken while the cryptids are doing their quantum state transition. I notice that they start out as solid before turning into this hazy bluish violet glow that slowly fades out to nothing. I think the color change has a direct correlation with the change of quantum state. The higher the frequency or phase shift, the higher up in the light spectrum the colors will be displayed. They tend to be dark anyway, especially on photos, and when I try to enhance the lighting and colors of the images, the cryptids will always stand out with a bluish violet tint in contrast with the rest of the background. So perhaps their natural color is very close to the ultraviolet color band of the light spectrum. Only children and certain people can see up in this range and note all the details. The rest of us only see a very dark silhouette of a figure. Perhaps this gives meaning to the phrase that the Bigfoot lives in the shadows. Once they start their quantum transition, their lower UV color goes higher to the point where no human can see them as they fade out of sync with our reality. There may be some scientific basis for this color shift if an object experiences a quantum shift of frequency or phase. I'm sure everyone has parked in front of a railroad track while a high-speed train approaches blowing their horn. Notice that the horn not only gets louder, and the pitch of the tone starts to go up higher. As the train passes, the horn immediately starts to go lower in pitch as it fades off into the distance. What we have experienced is called the Doppler Effect. As the sound source moves closer to us, the pitch goes up, and conversely, When it moves away from us, the pitch goes down. Light is also affected by the Doppler effect, for instance, in detecting distant planets. As planets move closer to us, their colors go up in the light spectrum while going down as it moves away. By measuring these color changes, scientists can determine if objects in space have an orbital pattern, thus indicating the possibility of a planet. It is my contention that there is also some kind of Doppler effect in play as objects or beings transition their quantum state to affect their color as observed by us. Since our quantum state as humans seem locked in place, the change of quantum state of an observable object is similar to it moving away from us, thus raising its color as a side effect. The opposite is true too. As an object changes its quantum state to match ours, it's moving towards us and lowering the color of the object as it fades into being a solid object. So, in conclusion, I have presented quite a few concepts that seem to make sense with everything I have personally observed with the cryptids over the years. Now keep in mind, this is just a proposed theory, and some of what I talked about may or may not be completely on target. However, I think it has the ring of truth, and, at the very least, will get others to think about this for further research. Now, in the next segment of our program, we're going to have an interview with Arla Williams. She is an author of a couple of books about Bigfoot and has had amazing experiences with him ever since an early age. So stick around for that. You're listening to Greenwater Nightz. I'm your host, Sam Ritchie, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Greenwater Nightz. I'm your host, Sam Ritchie, and we are with Arla Williams in the Kiamish. How do you say that mountain again?
It's the Kiamishi.
Kiamishi Mountains. What Indian... I'm sorry. I should be more politically correct and say what Native American tribe is that language from? For I know it has to be something or another.
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know either? Oh, okay.
No, we are within what were the boundaries of the Choctaw Nation. And so, is it Choctaw? I don't know. There were a lot of Indian people here before the Choctaw people were here. And I've never looked that up. I'm going to have to look that up and see what that is.
But you are in the southeast corner of Oklahoma?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we are. We are.
I know I usually associate Oklahoma with being a flat area. I know a long time ago, when I was in the business of flying around the country, setting up computer systems, Tulsa, Oklahoma was one of my spots that I actually was there for, probably about 4 days, I believe. And my impression, it was pretty flat up there. So I imagine the mountains are more or less to the west side of the state. So,
well,
you said
actually,
the east side. Actually, the east side. Okay.
Actually, there are, we have the Wichita Mountains in the southwest, and then if you come east from there, we have the Arbuckle Mountains, and then if you come on east, you go into the Kiamishi Mountains, and then if you go into northeast Oklahoma, you're going to be in the Ozark Mountains. So we are not flat, as most people think we are. And Kiamishi is a Caddo word, and they think it means noisy bird.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there are a lot of birds down here.
Oh.
Maybe why that's from, I guess.
It could very well be. I mean, I accidentally went to Oklahoma one time. Before that, I took a drive cross country, and I was supposed to go all the way through Kansas, but somehow I got off the track on Lawrence, Kansas, took the turnpike, drove almost 60, 70 miles before I realized I was going the wrong way, and I was kind of wondering why I didn't see any stores. I mean, no expressway turnoffs for restaurants or anything like that. Got to a toll booth, finally got my directions straightened around, and had to turn back around. But yeah, I know Kansas itself is pretty flat, going all the way through, and that was probably the hardest drive going across country, because it's just, you get this tunnel vision effect as you're going down the interstate, because it's straight. There's nothing to see. Towns are separated, once every 50 or 60 miles until you see a silo in the distance, or one of the grain, the grain storage areas. So anyway, I'm getting off topic a little bit.
Well, there are a lot of Sasquatch in Kansas, so there you go.
They're all over the place. I'm telling you right now.
Yes, they are.
I mean,
yeah, they are.
I mean, of course, sometimes I think we're in ground zero up here in Washington, but then I start hearing reports from my neck of the woods when I was raised in Kentucky, and of course we have, now the name is starting to fleet me right now as we're doing this live, and anyway, we have several researchers over there, and because we have wooded areas as well. I know I was raised near Fort Knox, and there's the military reservation. Well, guess what? That's a wooded area, and there's water.
It is. Yeah, a lot of reports from being in that area, and I've actually been in the woods pretty close to Fort Knox as well, and I can assure you they are there also, and in eastern Kentucky, because I've spent quite a bit of time in eastern Kentucky in the Daniel Boone Forest. So.
Oh yes, and I don't know why I'm having such a problem trying to remember everybody's names over there, but there's Jonathan. I mean, he was in the
yeah.
I mean, Jonathan is over there, and then who was the researcher? I was even on with a show with him, and I'm just trying to think. He was from my neck of the woods in Rineyville. I'm just totally.
You're talking about Parker.
Yeah, Parker Duvall. There you go. I just needed a jump start a little bit. Just give me part of the name, and I'll get the rest of it.
Those two are now.
Yeah, what's really strange is that I was raised there, and I had a section of woods behind the house. The subdivision we lived in, that was the edge of the city limits of Ratcliffe. And I'd go out there all the time and rake the trails, and I'd pick up garbage, and I'm just wondering, maybe someone's watching me, because I notice everybody that seems to have contact with the Sasquatch, it's usually because of something about you.
Oh,
that they're attracted to. Like, they got your number early on, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they did. And it is interesting in talking with people who have this recall of things that happened when they were young, and when they were young they had no reference or no idea about the Sasquatch, and then when they in this again, it's like, that's what that was. So it's like this epiphany happens to so many people now who actually did have some kind of encounter when they were younger, and for whatever reason thought it was a bear, or something else. And it's interesting to me that everybody's watched. It doesn't matter if they want to have anything to do with you or not. If you're out in the woods at some point, you're going to be watched, whether you know it or not.
Yeah, you kind of wonder the reasons sometimes, because it's not always a Sasquatch, and I know that you mentioned the little people. I think in your first book, didn't you mention that? Okay.
Yes.
You've had experiences. You've been able to see them more so. I'm not having quite as much success on the actual. I'm getting better at this, but on the actual level where I'm actually seeing them physically myself. However, you know that I've been doing research, taking pictures, and I've gotten fairly adept at looking at these pictures and using very high resolution cameras, and can actually pull them out. And some of the ones have been pretty awesome. And of course, you know, you came down here and for the, I believe it was it the drum making session or making rattles or?
Yeah, we made the rattles. We came down and did a workshop there at Barb's and taught the rattles, and then we got to get out in the woods there. It was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, it was. I was so. What's the word I want to say? I was just overwhelmed. I mean, we've had other groups of people come there, and then of course there was quite a few people there while the rattle making session was going on there. But you guys stuck around afterwards. I think
yes,
you and Jonathan
did.
And the group of you and Kay, Oma and
all that.
Ginger.
Yeah.
And you know what? It gave us an opportunity to get to know you guys a whole lot better, and gave you guys also the opportunity to go up to what I call the Field of Dreams area and check out what was going on in that area. I remember very distinctly you coming up the trail with me, and with your ability to see things more so than myself, you could actually see the little guys running up and down along the log up there, you know.
Yeah, that one was, he ran across a log and then ran to the end of it where it kind of jutted up over the path. And he sat there on the end, and it was like he was swinging his legs. You know, how you'll sit down on your legs. So he was, you know, right there just watching us primarily, but not really even caring that anyone could see him.
I don't think they're really minding much at all about who sees them anymore, because lately I've been up the trail, and I haven't been up there as much as I'd like to this summer because I got involved in a lot of projects around my cabin and everything. But I did go up a few times and take pictures, and I always go up there with a protocol, playing my flute and talking to them, because I want to acknowledge that they're there, and that I want to acknowledge the fact that they enjoy the music, you know, and to be able to say, okay, I'm playing the music for you guys, I'm letting you know I'm up here, and I'm going to go ahead, I tell them I'm going to use my camera, I'm going to take pictures of the surrounding area there. And if you guys happen to be in the photo, try to wave or something, you know, try to, you know, jump up and down and let me see you in the pictures and all that. You know, some of them actually do.
Yes, they do. Some of them are very bold.
And you know, I think it has to do with the trust factor. Like, if they've known you for such a long time, you do the same thing over and over again. They do develop a comfort level for certain people that they don't mind trying to, I don't want to say they let their guard down, but I think they see things in people that they can have a pretty confidence in the trust in the person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we do too, even with other humans. You know, sometimes we're guarded when we have someone come around that we're not really sure about, and so we don't open up to them. But you know, maybe after a while we do. And you know, I kind of feel like that the fairies or even the dragons or all of the what I call primal beings, they watch us and they know who we are. And, you know, when we are comfortable in ourselves going out there with them and they watch us, then, you know, they become comfortable too. It's kind of a mutual thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, is the emotions we carry is not fear-based.
Right.
And that's the big difference. We go out there with a sense of knowledge of who they are.
Oh, yes.
We've gotten to know them. I mean, did we meet them physically? No, but they tap into our consciousness somehow over time, especially if you're in close proximity, like, for instance, you are in the mountains area, and of course I'm here most of the time in the Greenwater area, and I kind of feel that what do you call tapping into your psyche a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost feel their thoughts. You can feel their concerns.
Yes, yeah, I think so too, and and it works both ways because they've already tapped into us long before we usually tap into them, and so they know pretty much about us and how we're going to be, but a lot of times they give us the chance to prove, who we're going to be.
Oh, you mean like testing you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think they do.
I think some of those tests, for instance, I think one of the primary tests they use, and you might agree with this, is they want to see how observant you are. For instance, like let's put this little bitty glyph on the ground and see if you look down and look at it and actually make a reaction. Because as you say, they're going to be watching you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Even the fairies, their glyphs are very tiny, and I see them all the time. They put them right on the steps a lot of times when, where you come in. And if you're not paying attention or you're not aware, then you're just going to go up those steps and never see that. And it's amazing to me how much over the last few years that they've really started using a lot of glyphs now, which is, it's nothing more than communication. And it's interesting to me because say we humans, it doesn't take much to give us a little joy when it comes to a glyph. Whether it's from the Sasquatch or the little people or the fairies or whomever, we're like, we see them and we're like, oh my gosh, look, that's so cool. And they're watching us, and I know that they're enjoying that joy. We're so easily pleased, and I like that.
Yeah, and I've noticed the things in my own yard, for instance, and they try to sometimes put the glyphs and some of the things they want to grab our attention in areas where we walk. And they'll make it more obvious. In other words, they'll put it right next to the car or something, or it'll be by the steps. And I've had like pieces of wood, for instance, or bark that's laying out on the ground there between my work shed, which is behind my back door of my cabin, and so there's about 25 feet of separation between the two. Every time I go out there, I'm looking at this bark, the 4 or 5 pieces of bark, and every day they're forming some kind of new some kind of different pattern, geometric pattern. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And it's amazing because I know that just, everybody else will say, oh, it's just coincidence. Oh, you just accidentally kicked it around and it just fell that way, But I'm sorry to say that sometimes you see these glyphs, they're interlaced with each other, and that doesn't fall like that. Something had to place it like that.
Yeah, two hands, or, the ability to do those things. And as a weaver, I really pick up on intricate things. I think I posted a video today where the hairy kids had taken a ribbon I had tied in a tree, and they had brought it around and wrapped it and tied it. And, it's like, the wind doesn't tie like that. Yeah, it'll flap a ribbon or whatever, but it doesn't do this intricate go down in under this and pull that out. And, so you just have to let people, think what they want to think, because they're going to anyway. But with them doing these things, you do begin to pick up on how intricate that some of them are done. And, well, I know that this leaf or leaves did not fall under that piece of flint. There are some things that you just know that can't happen.
The wind just blew it that way.
Yes, a whole stem of multiple leaves going up the side ended up underneath a big piece of flint. Now that's interesting. I want to see, now a tornado maybe, but not just a wind or, whatever, so.
Yeah, one time I had some of the more obvious things, and sometimes it's just very vague. Sometimes they want to see, well, they start out with something really major sometimes, because we had a tree out the front of the cabin area here, and I had just was completing the construction of a greenhouse on my property, and this was back in August of 2014. And I know that earlier that evening, the tree itself did not have anything around it. It was pretty clear of anything. So I'm saying that because when I got up in the next morning, what I found was pieces of construction material, like 2x4 or 2x6 cut pieces, carefully laid all the way around the trunk of the tree. And it's like, who in the world would have done something like that? And it's like, yeah, I know it. Yeah, it's not the. You finally determine that it's not the kind of human prank that someone's going to waste their time doing something like that.
No.
And I actually was able to get some meaning from that. It was like, we really enjoyed watching you build this thing. And I guess in their own special way, they were trying to figure out how to help out by leaving pieces of construction material around the tree to see if I needed any help with any of that. So that's what I got from that. And of course, I've gotten other small things like a dried root wad, for instance, that was left on the yard. And it's, considering how rainy it is here sometimes, it's a little unusual to find something that was not rotted out, it was dried. It came from something that was in a very dry location, and it would just so happen to end up in the yard. Well, things like that just don't end up just, dropping out of the tree like that, or a dog bringing it in the yard like that. So I call those things gifts from them.
Oh, yeah. And that's, I know, they're forever doing things outside. I guess it was a week or so ago, I've been getting back into creating, and I had been outside using my Dremel tool on some little things where I was making some miniature drums. And I had the chair there, and then I had a plastic container up next to me where I could lay my Dremel tools on and be able to reach them. And so I had worked on it for a while, and I laid my little box of all my little bits and polishers and everything else. They were still setting on the container. And I had my ruler there that I was using. But I put my Dremel over on the other side where the chair has a little arm, and I got up and came into the house to do some things. And Matthew had gone off for just a little bit, and he came back, and he come in the door and he said, "What are your tools doing all over the ground out there?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, your tools that you're using with your Dremel, they're all laying scattered on the ground." And I thought, what the heck? And I went out there, and the whole container had been moved probably 3 feet. And my Dremel tools were all scattered on the ground there, right off the side of the container, and my ruler was laying there. And I looked at it, and I was like, okay, what's going on? And then I looked on the container, and there was a leaf with a rock setting on the leaf.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, guys, all right. So you picked up the container, you dumped the... I don't know how you did this, but I'll accept the peace offering. Just don't be messing with my Dremel tools. So,
obviously, young ones doing that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. They're here in the Comanche Mountains, people tell you that there are more Sasquatch in these mountains than there are people. And that's pretty much the truth of the matter. But it doesn't seem to matter where we go. We still have, some kind of interaction or something going on with them, and especially the kids.
You were talking about some of this mischievousness of some of them, the juveniles, and we're thinking about our friend Tom Cantrell. One of the campouts that he came with Barb and Gabby group was down one of our remote areas near Greenwater where we camped out, and I think it was during the summer solstice, so there was a lot of activity going on, and of course wherever Tom goes the whole clan seems to follow, and it was kind of funny. There was a couple of things I'm trying to research right now, but that's a side topic for another day. But it was the time that I had an experience where I got on my tent at 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't want to go all the way across the camp to the far end where the lone utility tent was that we used as a bathroom or a restroom. So I figured, there's safety in numbers. I'm right in front of the fire pit, even though it was out. And I'll just take care of my business on the side of the tent. And I said, no, nothing's going to bother me. Right? and as soon as I get done, the minute I get done, all of a sudden I hear a bang on the ground, and all of a sudden a young juvenile runs right in front of me and runs around like faster than you could possibly imagine around this fire pit. Makes all sorts of grunting and strange noises before it takes off again. It's like, great. I thought it was Gabby, I thought it was Barb's dog, Gabby, at the time. And I guess if I had figured that wasn't Gabby, I think I would have passed out. I mean, and what's, however, it might have been one of the same ones that, Tom was using a CPAP machine in his tent. And, of course, to power it, he has a inverter, and it's connected to the battery. But the battery and the little clamps are outside of the tent, so he's probably running the cable underneath the one of those things where it connected through the tent area. And so these little guys that come around, they start disconnecting his battery while he's using a CPAP machine in the middle of the night. Well, they probably didn't realize that that's kind of creating kind of a detrimental situation for him, So.
Yeah, that when they're mischievous, like kids. I mean, they're going to try to pull things on you if they think they can. And I am such an easy mark. Oh my gosh, it's been like this thing of years and years and years of them pulling pranks, on me from one thing to another. But there's something about that thing when you go out to go to the bathroom, and there are so many people say, I was right in the middle of going into the bathroom, and here come one. And that's like with Jonathan when he came in 2015 and stayed with me for a while in the cabin. He had gone outside that night to go to the bathroom because I don't have indoor plumbing, and Indigo rushed him.
Really?
Indigo was playing, but Jonathan's in the middle of going to the bathroom, and he's like, well, do I stop and run in the cabin or do I finish? But the thing is, when you are going to the bathroom like that, they have this captive audience that they can do things to, run by you, whatever, and you're already in the process. And I've heard so many say, I didn't know whether to stop and run or finish and run. So it's like this fun game that they have. Oh, wow, they're going to the bathroom. Now's the time. We got them. So, and I know they're laughing as they go by. And a lot of times, like you said, at breakneck speed and not being quiet at all. But, yeah, they love that. But what kid doesn't want to pull something on another?
Well, I think they're just wanting to see our reaction for every possible scenario they want to throw at us,
Oh, yeah. Let's see what I can get from this, And, of course, they're big on hiding one of my shoes. And they've done that multiple times and hid the other shoe so that I know I did not place that shoe where I found it. So,
we're going to go ahead and take a quick break here. This is basically a station break for Greenwater Nightz. So this is Sam Ritchie. We'll be right back with our continuation of our interview with Arla Williams right after this break. See you in a minute. Welcome back. This is Greenwater Nightz. I'm your host, Sam Ritchie, and we're continuing our discussion with Arla Williams about some of this amazing experiences and the little practical jokers in the woods that we call the young juvenile Sasquatches. So that was quite a...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, some of the things about the... I thought I was having the unique experience about the restroom situation, but you're saying this is kind of like their M.O. sometimes.
It is.
Getting you in the most embarrassing situations and then running in front of you.
Yes, and it's really bad on women because we're in a totally different position and can't just run. But, they're just having fun and pushing us a little. I know I had unpacked some things the other day, and I'd had a couple of crystal points that were probably, 3 inches long, and I'd placed them over here on my little table where I have things put there. And I hadn't paid any attention. I was outside doing some cleaning on the grounds here, and the sun was shining. And I saw something, glistening over there. And I walked over there, and I said, Matthew, there's the 2 crystals I unpacked and put on the table. And he was like, what? I said, yes, here's my 2 crystals laying here outside the door, away from where I would walk in the door, in the dirt. And I said, those little stinkers come in there, got those, probably had them out there looking at them, heard somebody or one of us come through the house or something, and they dropped them and took off. And, it's like something, every time around, there's something going on.
I had a case like that where, similarly, where they get caught off guard and they ran. But I actually had two incidents. One was the here on my property, actually just built a fire pit back I guess this was maybe 6 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. And I had the RV parked there, and so I got the fire started, and I went inside the RV just for a minute. And when I came out, all of a sudden I heard some rustling and some running right straight to the woods. I'm hearing this scream, like hideous scream, like they're taking off like a bat out of you-know-what. And I think it was a young one just got a little bit too curious, wanted to check out the fire as I was walking out the door. So I had that thing going on there. So that was kind of an amazing experience. But the other one was we were camping out one of the Barb and Gabby campouts at one of the areas nearby during the summer. And my tent was down below, closer to the river there. And you have these tent pegs that, with these guy wires around your tent to hold it in place. As I went down there, nobody else was down there, but as I went down there, I was starting to smell that really weird odor that everybody talks about. Never had smelled that before. But, that skunky, typical odor that people talk about with Sasquatch. Well, I got down there, had my flashlight, and I was looking around my tent, and then I'll notice off the side, it says, the guy rope was really super loose. I mean, it was like really, like no tension to it or nothing. It was had all the slack to it. Then I got to notice the peg was not even in the same place where it was before. So piece the story together. Here I'm coming down there, and all of a sudden the young juvenile just happens to be around my tent and gets panicked, starts to, and trips over the guy, the guy rope.
Oh yeah.
And then in a panic, pushes the thing, the tent peg back in, but in the wrong place.
Oh yeah. There was a camp out here in the Kaimishi Mountains several years ago, and several people had their tents kind of like all in a row, and one woman had just a very small tent, but she wasn't placed exactly in line with everybody and was kind of out to the back a little bit, and a young one come running down through that back area where those tents were and tripped on one of her tie-down wires and rolled up into her tent.
Actually ran into the tent and rolled up into it, huh?
Rolled the woman up inside. He hit the tie down, and he kind of drug it, and it just flipped over a woman that was in tent.
Oh boy! So, the young ones are just learning, I suppose, and they they're learning the ropes, no pun intended.
Yeah. Well, I got a smell story for you, too.
Okay, go for it.
When Jonathan was staying with me in 2015, we were sitting outside and talking, and Blue, who is Indigo's younger brother, who is a young male juvenile, was practicing his smell. He would do it, and Jonathan and I would go, "Oh God, stop. You're killing us. Stop." And he would stop. Mm-hmm. And then here in a little bit, he'd do it again. And we were like, "Stop it. You're killing us." And he did it there for a little while, and then finally he just took off. And I said, "That's just like a kid. They're going to stink you out one way or another." But that was so funny. They can do that at will, and that's what he was doing. He was just aggravating us doing it, because it really didn't smell good at all. And then he would quit, when we'd say, "Oh, stop it, Blue." And he'd stop for a little bit, and then he'd do it again. And it's like, I know he's over there, ha, 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 I'm going to get them again. What are they going to do to me? They couldn't catch me if they wanted to. So
I'm just curious about something. Do they turn off and on? I mean, is it really sudden they can stink on and stink off?
Oh, yes. I mean, it's like they've done it and they've taken it off. They've done it and now they're not doing it. And the interesting thing is the smell, when they're doing it that way, the smell it goes away.
Just like that, just instantly.
Yes, it does not hang in the air. Now, there are times when it feels like it is hanging in the air, but, I sometimes wonder if that's just not them continually doing it to get your attention or, to make you go somewhere else.
Well, it kind of makes you wonder if it's just like with infrasound, which they use on people too, using some kind of low vibration to kind of like induce the anxiety or fear in certain people, mainly for the purpose of getting certain people away from an area. Like if there's a situation where there's a lot of juveniles around and it's not safe for humans to be around there, or they're being protective about it. I'm just wondering if the smell factor also is something that's mentally induced in people, and not so much that's coming through the actual the glands that we use for smelling things.
I believe it's either way. I know that they can do pretty much what they want to do and how they want to do it. So if they want to make you think that, I have no doubt that they can. But can they actually physically do it? Yes, I believe they can do that too. So, but it's like anything with them. They do pretty much what they choose to do.
Well, they can induce visions in people too. So if you think about it, I mean, do you kind of agree with that sometimes, that they can tap into your mind a little bit to actually cause you to, like a dream state or something, induce a vision that is so surreal that it even encompasses the senses that you have, like smell and vision and everything else?
Oh, yeah. I don't doubt that at all. I mean, we do that anyway without their help. Some people journey like that. I've journeyed a lot in my lifetime like that without benefit of their assistance, where in the dream time would literally wake with evidence of where I had been in the dream time. And, that's one of those things that some people have a problem with. But, when you have these two ancestor grandmothers who come during the dream time and they take you somewhere. And on this one occasion, they'd taken me to a river, and we had walked out into the river and just above my knees, not, completely submerged, but just above my knees. And I had sleep pants on. And when I woke up that next morning, my pants were wet from how deep we waded in the water. And, I brought back physical things from, where we were. And so we do that anyway. Can they assist us in doing that? Yeah. And I sometimes wonder if they're not helping us to figure out that we can do these things on our own and have done them. And, it's not like they have all of these things that they do. We can do them too. We've just forgotten how.
I absolutely agree with you. As you may know, I went ahead and took a 6-month shamanic course with Muriel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an eye-opener for me, because it allowed me to really tap into some things that I didn't know I had, potentially wise, or to understand something about other realms and things that we as humans have the ability to tap into if we just follow certain techniques to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And I, of course, was raised as a very logical person in my past and tend to have that type of mindset. Of course, I have the creative side too, which it lends itself more towards tapping into that, into those dream state times and everything that actually allows us to see things that, they're totally unbelievable. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, This is real stuff. So, and I'm looking at the Sasquatch having all these special abilities and everything, and then I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe that's the normal thing, that every being, every intelligent, sentient being has the ability to do that. It's just humans are kind of like behind on that, wouldn't you say? I mean, we
walked away. Yeah, we walked away from it.
We
quit doing it. Yeah, exactly. It's still there. That ability and all of that knowledge of how to do those things is still there. We just have to open up and tap into those things. And, there are so many things in my life that happens that, people say, no, that couldn't happen. Well, I know that they happened, and a lot of stuff is actual, like I said, physical stuff. That's like with our lagoon family, the little Bigfoot dolls and things. Well, we have, of course, Uncle Spud, and then we have Sweet Pea, and then we have Peapod, who is the baby of Sweet Pea and Peanut. Well, Matthew and I were in the wreck. Our friends went and got everything out of the truck and that they could. It was totaled, and put it in containers and brought it. Well, I got Sweet Pea and Uncle Spud out, and I couldn't find Peapod. And now I've unpacked everything that was brought to us, and Peapod is nowhere. We do not have the baby anymore. And I said to Matthew, I can't find Peapod. I don't know where he would be. He's not in anything. I've gone through everything multiple times looking to see if he got stuffed in something. Mm-hmm. And he didn't. And so I took Uncle Spud and Sweet Pea, and I put them over the bed on a shelf. And I just said to Matthew, I don't know whether to get another baby or not. And then I said, no, I'm not going to get another baby. I want Peapod. I want, Peapod to be back, and here I'm a grown woman and I'm talking about toys. But, the Lagoon family is more than just toys. They're about a whole family of people who have come together, and so it was more than that. Well, I just left it like that, and then I guess next day or something, I went in there, and there was Peapod.
Just magically appeared just out of the blue.
And I said, Matthew, did you find Peapod? And he said, no. I said, he's in here with Uncle Spud. And he said, what? He says, what? A lot. And he came in there, and he just looked and smiled and shook his head. And it's like, how did Peapod get from northwest Arkansas in the mountains in a semi that was totaled? How did he get here? And I believe he was brought here.
Oh, yeah. That's a great story, because it at least for Matthew, perhaps trying to figure that one out, how in the world did this get here?
Yeah, and that's with Matthew, he's so open-minded, and he believes a lot of stuff. When I figured out he believed in dragons, I was like, okay, this guy's okay.
Well, that's a good start, isn't it? That's a great
yes,
start.
It is. Yeah, it was really good for me, for sure. But he takes everything in stride. I mean, they've been messing with him a lot, leaving him personal glyphs. They left, and we're staying in a fifth wheel right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he had come up from over at our friends, and there was a glyph. And he was like, look at that. And he took pictures of it and everything, and we talked about it. And what it was an F with kind of, and then there was an A, and there was my symbol of a little stick making an X over the A. There was a feather stuck in the ground, and this is like rock here. And then there was a Y stick stuck in the ground between, excuse me, the F and the A. Now, what most people don't know, they may know now, but what people don't know was Matthew's biological name starts with an F.
Oh, so that it was a symbol for his name, maybe.
His name with me.
Oh.
It was an F with an A, and then a feather, and then the stick that was like a Y, that was like at the head of both of us, right in between us.
Wow, that's yeah, I can kind of figure that one out pretty easy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And people wonder why they don't, the Sasquatch don't, well, why don't they just come out and just tell us instead of just using elusive methods like symbols and signs, but
yeah.
That's not how the universe works, and that's not how they operate,
No, it's their choice. But, it was like, for most people, if they saw that with that F, because Matthew's name is Matthew Twilly, so you would think there would have been a T with an A. But the F was like, whoa, whoever did this knows. And, of course, we know who did it, so that, makes it even more special, I guess. So.
Wow, that's, those things are just so amazing, when you look at the little signs. I mean, you almost like want to be a detective. A detective is the same way. It's like you're looking for the little clues. You're like the Sherlock Holmes of looking for what the Bigfoot are trying to tell us. You're looking for every little clue on the ground and everything. You finally get to that point. You become sensitized to all the little signs.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
I know my last episode I talked about numbers. I don't know if you had a chance to hear anything like that, but it was about the synchronicities, different numbers showing up all the time, and I had some amazing ones that like 44, for instance, always showed up, or 144, 144,000. Guess what, Arla? I actually went on Google, I typed in your name, Arla Williams, and it came up with a number of results of your name, and you know what the number was? 1,440,000 exactly.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not even talking about a partial search result for, like some odd number or anything. It was smack on 1,440,000 results on your name. Now, I'm sure it had, it had other things in there too, but sometimes I find that when I'm watching videos or everything, I'll watch it and all of a sudden, oh, this one had 444 views.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
It ends at, this video is exactly 4 minutes and 44 seconds long. And you know what? I don't think people intentionally caused it to be like that. I think the universe is behind this.
Yes, it's like that sacred geometry, but it's not the completion of the sacred geometry, but it is that beginning step that connects us to all of that goes before us and all of that goes ahead of us. And I know when I was getting ready to move to Oregon in 2013, I lived in Oregon for a little while. I started, the numbers started, and I was given, like, it started out, they would be in a sequence of 3. And I got, when I'd made the decision that I was going to go, I got 1, 2, 3. And I kept seeing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 everywhere. And then as I got closer, I started seeing 4, 5, 6. It seemed like every time I turned around, there was a 4, 5, 6. And then just a very short time out, I got 7, 8, 9. 7, 8, 9. And so I went back and I looked at that, and what it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is go. And then it came up 11. 11 was everywhere. And so it was just like a little note of the universe saying, okay, here we go. We've set this intent, and I'm going to help you as you go to remember that, yes, you've made the decision, and the universe backs this decision. So,
wow, that's amazing. I mean, I had a really life-changing one like that. Probably the most significant one I had was when I was with a Native American medicine woman that was a friend of mine that we were riding down near Ocean Shores. Excuse me. And she said, there's someone behind the car. There's someone in the back of the car. It was a spirit. But it turned out to be my spouse who had died of cancer previously. I'm trying to make this short story. And I said, I don't know about that. It says, I was still catering to some religious ideas about things being demonic and everything. And I said, well, I need proof. So we go on Pacific Beach and we pull up and we park. And just as soon as we park, I'm looking up in the sky. And I have my cell phone with me too. And I'm looking up, and all of a sudden I see the numbers 2213. It's clear as day. Up in the clouds, and whatever it got formed up there, I took a picture of it. Well, what do you do when you get numbers? You go on Google later on when you're at the hotel and say, I've got to look this up to see what it is. And the first thing that came up, guess what it was? It was Revelation 22:13. And you know what it says? I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Or something along those lines. It says, oh my God, you talk about the shivers going up my spine about that. It was just like a confirmation of the source of all things sending a message.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's really cool. And I love those affirmations that we get. And the universe gives us affirmations all the time on so many things. I know I saw a deal today on Facebook, and someone had sent it to me. It's at one of the crystal mines over here at Board Camp, which is not that far from me. And they were talking about they had a trail cam out there, and some of the stones were levitating. And there were these crystals that were moving around, and lights and all this thing. And it just hit me that one of the messages that Sanat Kumara gave to me in 2009 was about a change happening, and crystals would be falling like rain and moving around and dancing and stuff. And it was just like, whoa, that's exactly how the universe works. It shows you something, and then it'll bring something else to mind to affirm something that you know.
Oh, absolutely. We're coming up to our second end of our second half hour, Arla, and if you want to, we can do one more half an hour, and I mean, there's so much to talk about probably, if you're okay with that.
I'm fine. It's up to you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and do a station break. This is Greenwater Nightz. I'm Sam Ritchie, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Greenwater Nightz. I'm your host, Sam Ritchie, and we're continuing our final discussion with Arla Williams. Okay, Arla, I know we did a little bit of pre-discussion before we got back in the program. The first part of my show for this particular episode was called A Concept of Quantum Realities, and I was getting to some pretty heavy stuff which had to do with maybe possibly explaining how the Bigfoot's cloak, or possibly go into a different realm. At least with the theory I came up with, it kind of explained a whole lot of different things that kind of made more sense to me, especially with some of the photos I've been seeing of how they tend to turn bluish before they disappear and all that. So I understand that you had an experience with one of the Bigfoot that you know of that allowed you to actually experience something like that. Can you kind of go into that story a little bit at this point?
Okay. Actually, it was with Kashima, who is my teacher, and I call him grandfather because that's kind of how he seems like to me, is he's a grandfather. And we'd been walking one day and talking, and he was telling me some of the things about things that they're able to do, and like in cloaking. And we had come upon some wild turkeys, and of course they saw us and scattered. Well, we continued our walk, and I'd ask him a few questions about it, and we're coming back through that one area, and the turkeys had started to filter back into that area. And just all of a sudden, for some reason, I said, "Grandfather, can you hide me?" And I was hidden. Now, how I know I was hidden is because I probably wasn't 15 feet from one of the wild turkeys, and it had no idea that we were there. None of the turkeys had any idea that we were there. Now, everything looked normal. There wasn't a shimmer. There wasn't anything that looked out of the normal, other than we're standing 15 feet from a wild turkey, and it's totally oblivious that we're there. I did start touching my arms and my legs and looking at myself, and I was going, oh my gosh. And, you know, I feel normal. I still feel myself touching myself. I still look the same. Grandfather looks the same. Everything looks the same. The only thing different is the fact that I felt lighter. Like I didn't have anything holding me down, like gravity, you know, would make you feel maybe a little heavier. But that's the only difference that I saw.
Wow. So you actually didn't feel the heaviness of your body, basically, like gravity normally does with people, then? Right. I
didn't feel like I was going to float away or anything. I still felt solid. But, you know, knowing that those turkeys were right there let me know, yes, I was hidden.
Well, that's an amazing experience. I'm trying to figure out how. I guess I shouldn't be as concerned about how that happens, but it does make you wonder exactly how they do it. It's like you said before, that humans probably had those abilities at one time in some eon age before, and we lost how to do that for whatever reason.
Yes, I agree. We quit doing those things partly because we were told they were wrong to do. You don't do those things. That's not what you're supposed to do. And so we gave up those things. And so many now are open to remembering. And, I was blessed growing up and as an adult to be able to witness things that some tribal elders have done. So one particular story, I'll make it kind of short. When I was a teenager, some kids and I were riding around town in my car, and there was an old Creek Indian man who lived about, 10 or 12 miles out of town. He never had a car. He always walked everywhere he went, and everybody would say he had medicine, and that meant he could do things. And one day, we were going down Main, and he was at the edge of town getting ready to turn to walk out towards where he lived. And I told everybody, I'm going to stop and pick him up and give him a ride home. And they were like, no, don't do that. He's got medicine. And so I didn't. But what I did do was continue on the road out to where he lived. Now, that old road, you had to ride down the middle of that old road. It was so bad. And so I did not meet a car coming towards me, and no car passed me. Now, as we got to his house, he was walking up on his porch with his bag of groceries he had. Now, I wanted to get out and go ask him how he did that, but my grandmother would have, she would have been very upset with me, because that would have been very disrespectful. And, of course, the kids were all like, oh, no, he's got medicine. You can't get out. So we drove on. But, we left him walking on his road. We drove, and when we got to his house, he was already walking up on his porch with his groceries. Now, how did he do that?
It's hard to say. And some people got some kind of... They figured it out already, I suppose.
Yeah, and a lot of tribal elders have kept those things. They've kept the knowledge, and it's not readily shared with everybody. I watched Grandmother Margaret Bayhan, who's Cheyenne Arapaho, move a storm headed towards us. Literally put her hands up and said prayers and moved that storm. Now, how did she do that? She knows how she did it. I've seen many of the Council of 13 Indigenous who are from around the world. I've seen them do some things that, you wonder, how in the world did they do those things? They remember. They've kept that knowledge and that wisdom alive.
There's a lot of power with prayer, too. Aside from the knowledge itself, I know in a very simple level that when a group of people pray, for instance, there seems to be power with more people that are focused on a particular thing as they're praying.
Yeah.
I remember that they've had several occasions where they did group meditation worldwide, like Pray for Peace. And on one occasion, when they did that, all of a sudden there was a sudden dip in violence around the world. Everything, the peacefulness came about because of the power of prayer of all these people, like millions of people praying at the same time. So the power is there. I think it's within our capability.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And for me, it is pure intent as a way to manifest what it is that we ask for. If our intent is pure when we ask, or if we just make a statement within pure intent, those things can happen. And I've had, that happen. There was just a simple thing. There are these flowers that grow here in Oklahoma, and they're beautiful red-orange, and they're on a big, tall stalk, and they usually only grow like on the sides of roads where the ground's being disturbed or it's, rocky or whatever. You don't see it growing in the trees and everything. And one day I drove by there, and oh my gosh, they were just so beautiful. And I just said, out of the pure intent of my heart, oh, I would love it if some of those grew at home. And it wasn't just a few days till I was down in my prayer spot, and they were growing and blooming down there in the trees. And that I've had several instances where there's been that pure intent. There was no forethought. It was just came from my heart to say that in that way, and that manifested that.
Just from the pure intent on manifesting that request.
Yes, that physical request, the physical affirmation that pure intent was answered. It was manifested. And they grew down there for a long time until I wasn't down in that area any longer. And they don't grow down in areas like where that was.
I'm so convinced that the reality we live in, or the one I guess I'm going to say that we're stuck in, or we think we're stuck in, there's something behind the scenes that allows us to get mastery over what's going on. I mean, it's just one of the things, and it goes back to this, is when I was convinced that as a logical person, and you think about the laws of probability or so-called coincidences. Well, how many coincidences do you need to prove that something strange going on here? I mean, like, how many times do you need something weird like happening, like you're doing the intent and all of a sudden, oh, it's just a coincidence the flowers just happen to grow here. I just happen to be thinking about that. I mean, how many times you got to be hit over the head with coincidences to understand that it defies the laws of probability? That there's... Yeah, go ahead.
It's that synchronicity of life. It's when you're in the flow. And when you are in that flow, pure intent just happens. When you're in that spot of there's no anger, no hate, none of these things are a part of your being in that moment, then you have that ability to manifest that through pure intent. Now, I can't say with pure intent, well, I'd like to have the lotto numbers, because I don't think that's pure intent. And, I know through my life that there have been times when those things happened. And it makes me excited for us humans now, because we're in such a pivotal point in our understanding who we truly are and how the whole world and the universe actually does work. And I just, I get excited about that for us humans. Going to get past all of this other stuff and get to that.
Well, I think that's part of the education that I think the Sasquatch are a stepping stone in some ways in helping us. There are other things in the universe that are helping us as well, but they're a really significant part of it in making us understand that we are more than what we think we are, and we're not just this body, for instance. And a lot of that comes from coming in this world with forgetfulness, first of all. And then you're going through all this indoctrination of this program of telling you all this stuff doesn't exist. All your imaginary friends when you're a child, you're seeing all these things. And I think children can actually see some of the other realms and things, and that's why they're able to do it. But as they get older, you get beat down so much, like, stop talking like that. You're just going nuts or whatever, looking at all this imaginary stuff, when in fact it could be actually real, until finally you've been brainwashed into just seeing what's inside that little box called 3D existence. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing when you finally are like that. I've been closed up in a religious cult for 37 years before I got back out of the box. And I'll tell you what, it took a lot of deprogramming on my part to get to relearn what I had forgotten as a child. And when I started doing that, then all of a sudden, all these things open up. The things I see in the woods, or the sixth sense, that my psychic abilities started growing up as well. Some of the shamanic things that I've learned have actually gave me more insight and into my abilities, my empathic abilities as well. And it's just not unique to me or you. It's something that can happen for every single human being on this planet, but they gotta take the steps necessary to pull themselves out of of the situation that we were born in here.
Yes, and that's so hard for some. I was lucky. I was, first encounter with the Sasquatch was when I was 6. And then, I was taught about them, and I spent all my time in the woods. Every chance I got, I ran off to the woods. And I could pretty much say anything I wanted to say, and the only one who ever shut me down was my mom, and I think I just freaked her so smooth out most of the time that she wanted to tone it down a little bit, because I did push her. One instance, I was 4, and I began dreaming about people, and they would tell me their name. And then we would be somewhere, and I would walk up to that person and say, "Hi, I know you, your name is." And we were at the theater. We had gone to see a movie, and we were out in the out area at intermission, and there were people standing around talking, and there was a man there that was not from our town, and I walked over to him, and I looked up at him, and I started talking to him, and I called him by his name, and he said, "How do you know my name?" And I started to tell him that I dreamed about him, and my mom she ran over there and grabbed me, and she said, "Shh, don't know. You probably just heard somebody call you that, and took me away." And she told me, she said, "You can't do that. You can't be going up to people and telling them their name, or, and here I am 4, almost 5, and doing this. So I was hard for my mom, to deal with. Now, my grandmother, that wasn't even a problem. And my dad never cared, what I said or did or anything else. So I count myself very lucky that I was never really put in a box and, told, "You can't do those things, those are wrong."
So your mom didn't necessarily see it as, your mother didn't see it as a gift necessarily, or as a hindrance perhaps, or something that you need to stop doing? Well,
it embarrassed her. And there I'm going to how I knew him was I dreamed about him. She knew that I dreamed about people, and I knew their names because I had, talked about it many times. But here we are in a public area, and I'm going up, and I'm going to talk to this man, and I'm going to tell him, the reason I know your name is because I had you in a dream, and you told me what your name was, During that period of time, you sure didn't say that in public, and surely not in the Bible Belt, for sure. So
yeah, I should have known better. I'm thinking back early on in the 60s or 50s, 60s, 70s era, or even the 80s, where you certainly didn't. You certainly didn't come out with certain things at that time, especially with, I can understand that, where you have these abilities, but, at that time, I think those kind of things frighten people. I think there was more fear-based for something out of normal. And not so much now. I think people just look at people doing what you just described, like I can pull a name out of a hat and it's the right name, as a novelty, perhaps. And, they're kind of wondering, well, there's a lot of people that do psychic things now, and they're able to predict things. It's a little bit more accepted, and I think it's just part of the changes in society and our way of thinking about that.
Yeah, I do too. I think, I've got one granddaughter who was very much like that from the time she was born. And my daughter, they have been wonderful with her and all their kids. Of course, my daughter Nellie, and they're, all very open too. And they were in the Gap one time getting some jeans. Tori was, I don't know, 6 or 7, and she struck up a conversation with this lady, and she said, in that prior life when we were in that life together, and this woman just looked at her, and Nellie didn't tell her to be quiet or anything. She just let her go ahead and talk, and she went ahead and paid for her jeans, and they left. So, it's being allowed to be open and, not told that you can't say these things, or, don't be doing that. And because it just stifles every creative gift inside you that we've been given to use. And that's an important thing too. Very important thing.
Yeah, I've kind of learned some of the things I've been exposed to, and you got to understand, I came from a corporate world, business-wise, so it doesn't take too kindly to, when you're a straight-laced IT person, for instance, and all of a sudden you start talking about, I just saw Bigfoot the other day, and it doesn't gel well, and I might have to say that, because I did that, and maybe I might have hurt myself a little bit on how they perceive me now. But I can understand that, and there's a lot of things, even with the local people here. I'll open up a discussion with them about certain things, but there's a lot of things I just keep my mouth shut about, because I know at some point they'll listen to you, but then they start patronizing you. Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. And they started like patting you on the shoulder and said, no, don't treat me like that either. It says you're not getting what I'm saying. So there's a time and place for everything, I think, when you're trying to discuss things that I think you got to find the audience or the people that really want to hear the message about what you got to say, about your interactions with the different beings. And even then, there's some extra things about myself that I haven't got into yet, especially on Greenwater Nightz, or even Planet Sasquatch for that matter, that I might have alluded to a little bit, but it's too over the top for a lot of people. And I'm just waiting for the time and place to actually bring up that stuff, or the right opportunity.
Yeah, and you know yourself when you're talking with someone who's going to be receptive and who's not. I know the other day something was said. We were talking about fairies and different things, and I said, "Oh yes." And this one woman said, "Dragons? You mean they're real?" And I said, "Yeah, they are." And she was like, "Oh, I am so glad. I've always wanted to see a dragon." And, up until that point, she hadn't really voiced that she even thought that they were real, even though somewhere inside her she wanted it to be so.
Wow, that's, yeah, that's, even though I'm on a regular radio program Monday through Fridays as a part of a roundtable on Night Dreams Talk Radio. I guess I could mention that, at least for now. And the thing is, we actually talked about different topics, and one of them was the appearance of what we thought were prehistoric beings. Like pterodactyls and dinosaurs and things like that. And it says, well, you know what? If they really exist, it says a dragon is nothing more than some kind of form of a dinosaur, and and if they really exist, maybe all the myths and legends of King Arthur or some of the stuff that went on back in the medieval ages were actually true.
Oh, so. Yeah. A lot of times with myth, there is more truth in myth than most people can believe. And because myths a lot of times become a myth because a society does not accept the truth of the myth.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just like what other myths that, I thought Bigfoot was a myth, and then, of course, you got the myths of the little people and the fairies and everything else, and I had no idea that these could even possibly be real, but it took actual experiences for me to realize that truth is stranger than fiction, and sometimes the myth stories are the reality, and I mean, it just blows your mind when you think about it. I'm still in awe about all the things happening to me, and they continue to happen to me, and I don't want them to stop. I want these experiences, the miracles that happen behind it too. It just keep it coming. I mean, I want to get, I'm looking for a revelation of what it all means and how it applies to us as humans. Is where are we going as part of the human race? I know it has something to do with our evolution and getting back to where we used to be, or moving into a new plane of existence that allow us to live in harmony with all the other cryptids, like the Bigfoot and little people, and not have this separation anymore that we feel.
Yeah, because the only separation is in our mind. There is no separation. They are all there. It's just we have closed our mind and separated ourselves from them. So separation is actually only in the person's mind that holds that separation. It's not there for anything else.
Well, maybe that's what's happening, and maybe that's why we're having more interactions, because we're the ones opening the door more. It's not the other way around.
Oh, yeah. Years ago I asked an elder, they were seeing the Thunderbird a lot, and some of the others were coming out, and I asked him, I said, where have they all been? And he said, they've always been right here. It's just man didn't see them anymore. And so now man's opening up to see them. So, that there is no separation except in a person's mind, and they're the ones that make that separation.
You couldn't say it any better. Well, Arla, I think we're just about out of time here for our interview. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me about all these different things. I mean, I've been trying to make sense of some things that are happening around Greenwater and trying to put together the pieces to the puzzle of understanding what this all means on a grander scale. Well, I want to also give you an opportunity real quick about where they can find your books.
Okay. They are on Amazon, but you can also get them through me. I'm on Facebook as Arla Collette. Most time you can just put in Arla Collette and find me on Facebook, and you can message me there if you want one from me.
Well, okay, Arla. I hope to have you back on the show again at some point. I'm sure there's going to be plenty for us to discuss on some other topics we didn't get a chance to get into. This is Sam Ritchie. Join me on the next episode of Greenwater Nightz. Take care.